Okay. All right. So, do you want me to start with Arkham Knight, or do you want to start with Deathstroke?
I think you should open.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and scale the Arkham Knight to Batman and Batman the Arkham Knight, and this should put him above Deathstroke because Batman one-shotted Deathstroke when he was coming for him. Here's the video. I'll go drop it in debates and scans.
May or may not have dropped all things I had because I forgot which was which.
It's fine. So in this boss fight, basically, Deathstroke has his entire like army of tanks, and then he's like stuck on the island with Batman and his tank, and then Batman and the Batmobile just blows them all up. Batman gets out of the Batmobile. Deathstroke tries to get the jump on him, and then he gets clobbered. Now, uh, the Arkham Knight has actually jumped Batman on numerous occasions, and that there was one time where the Arkham Knight actually jumped Batman. I'm jumping for simultaneously, so in a moment. And like
That's
he
perfectly fine.
before he even punched Batman, so Batman already knew he was before he could even do anything. And that this same Batman one-shotted Deathstroke. And that, mind you, Batman was actually trying against the Arkham Knight before he knew it was Jason.
These are meant to be still images, right?
Yeah, these are all just screenshots that I took. So, to explain these, basically, this is a titanium coated armor that Batman has on, and that this armor should still above Deathstroke's armor because titanium is inherently a harder skill than say whatever metallic armor that Deathstroke has, right? And that the Arkham Knight knows every weakness of the titanium armor, so he would likely know the weakness of Deathstroke's armor and could just kill him with a single bullet. What's your defense of this?
So I would actually make the counter argument that Deathstroke and Batman were more evenly matched than just getting one shot. And I'll post numerous scans that show this to like emphasize the point that's not like outline. So we actually see them trading blows. Batman with his wrist blades, and Deathstroke usually with his pole or with his staff or swords, as well as
You're
just raw
thinking of polearm, right? His polearm. It's generally referred to as a polearm. Sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
I just need to grab two more, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and
Okay.
against before I make my retort.
So, based on these numerous gifts that shows them pretty much fighting evenly with numerous weapons and just raw fists, I would imply that Deathstroke is more a rival to Batman than actually inferior to him. So while the Arkham Knight did catch Batman by surprise in this scene, I wouldn't say that inherently gives him the ability to just one-shot Deathstroke's armor.
Okay, so you see the video I linked? The one on the Deathstroke boss fight from Arkham Knight? I couldn't hear you. Can you please restate that?
Yeah, yes, I can see it.
Okay, so at 4 minutes and 20 seconds, Deathstroke is going to jump out of his tank, and that Batman literally out-muscles Deathstroke in one-shots. Meanwhile, this Arkham Knight actually gave Batman time to reply to him, but he couldn't actually land off an attack on Batman, right? And that the Arkham Knight consistently scales the Batman skill, which we both agreed that Batman scales above Deathstroke because of his skill. So I'm simply going to make the argument that his skill would just allow him to bypass Deathstroke. But the difference between the Arkham Knight and Batman is that the Arkham Knight even while enraged and while his mind is fucked, he can still retain over a situation. Because in the boss fight against Batman, even while his mind is racked with rage and he's clearly unbalanced because he sees Batman, he can still retain control of the situation. He can still quickly make his escapes and everything along those lines. I'll go drop the entire video, which outlines the entire boss fight. But to move on to the scans I have about it, Arkham Knight would be able to keep an eye on Death because heat scan that would allow him to detect Deathstroke. I don't think Deathstroke has a reply to this specific type of scanner that would just allow the Arkham Knight to keep his eyes on him. Along with the fact that the Arkham Knight has 2 pistols and transform them into a rifle and say take a sniping position. Not to mention he does have an RP rocket launcher, I call it, and that this rocket launcher can fire ICBM rockets, and that we know that because there's no proof of the contrary. Here, let me go drop a link to intercontinental ballistic missiles. So, and that these missiles can fire about over 1,000 meters per second, and that the only reason Batman even dodged in the first place was because he was aim dodging. Here's information on the ICBMs, and I'll go drop a screenshot of how fast ICBMs can fire, because it clearly says right here that the max I can fire at is 5,000 meters per second, by second, depending on the language you use. So if his guns isn't enough, and if he doesn't transform his weapons to a sniper and tries to get the job done that way, he can just fire his rocket launcher, and Deathstroke won't have time to dodge. Because I do not believe he's as mobile as Batman.
So to tackle these one by one, I would start with taking on the Arkham Knight's ability to just keep control of the situation. I would argue that Deathstroke should be able to not necessarily just outsmart him, but more he would be able to detect where he was coming from, since when Deadshot managed to destroy his sword, he knew exactly where the bullets were coming from, and he didn't really have time to see him. He just instantly knew, despite the fact that he was way beyond eyesight, he instantly knew where he was. So I argue that his perception and ability to calculate trajectory and movement would be able to keep an eye on the Arkham Knight, even if he was using his scanner and just keeping his distance at first to surprise attack Deathstroke.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Okay, so here, allow me to reply to that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
See, I was going to talk about the weapons next.
Okay, here.
The weapons are concerned. I could also argue
that's because I watched the video just now, and he was just aim tracing to find Deadshot. That's the only reason he even knew where Deadshot was at, because he was just aim tracing Deadshot. Had Deadshot not fired his round, I doubt Deathstroke would have even found him in that second. Can you prove Deathstroke can move as consistently mobile as Batman can in the Arkham Knight game? Because the Batman in Arkham Origin and the Batman in Arkham Knight are several years different in age. So we can go with the presupposition that Batman has gotten stronger, or at least has gained more experience throughout the entirety of the Arkham timeline. And that I would like to ask for evidence on whether or not Deathstroke can aim dodge missiles that can fire at 5,000 meters per second. Can you please drop that?
So I'll tackle these points one at a time, because that is 3 that I have to counter at this point.
Okay.
So As for also keeping somewhat not really edge, but also being able to control the battlefield, Deathstroke has smoke bombs on him very consistently. So I could argue that he would be able to at least temporarily distract the Arkham Knight, which would allow him to either get in attacks or begin to learn his weaknesses, which would start to give him an advantage. Now for the weapons.
Uh, that doesn't really respond to what I was saying earlier about the whole rocket thing or the skill argument that
No,
I'm making.
no, I haven't addressed that yet. This isn't my evidence for that. This is
All right.
essentially continuing on the point that Deathstroke should be at least comparable in being able to control the battlefield.
Okay. That's a Deathstroke who scales the Batman who's several years younger in Arkham Origins. Can you prove that that same Deathstroke would scale the Batman in Arkham Knight?
Oh, uh,
Yeah, so the in case you don't know, the background for Arkham Origin is that Batman was only the Batman for about a year or so, and that the 8 assassins going after him were employed by Joker, who has masked himself as Black Mask. So this Deathstroke would just scale to like an early Batman, right? I'm fine with saying that he scales to that Batman, but I'm saying that the Arkham Knight would scale to a much stronger or at least much more experienced Batman, and that he consistently does this, which should put him skill wise above Deathstroke. So here I'm also going to share a video here. If you go to 2 minutes and 50 seconds of this next video, I'm going to link. He talks about like the weaknesses that Batman actually has in his armor, and that his titanium coated armor would inherently have a higher durability than that of Deathstroke's, unless he could prove that otherwise. So for Arkham Knight to like easily deduce this type of armor that Batman has, this would not only mean that he could just get around like Deathstroke's protections, but not only that, he could just dominate the fight with the skill gap.
mm,
Because the argument you're making is more or less proving that Deathstroke skills turn earlier Batman, not necessarily a Batman who's several years older.
Do you know what I'm? I'm just trying to decide which one of you I'm going to take out first. We're both on the same page here.
okay, so I was unable to find any cutscenes or anything of Deathstroke in the Arkham Knight. So I can't directly
Okay.
prove that he does scale to that Batman because I couldn't find them fighting. Or
Okay.
anything of the sort.
We agreed to 2 rounds, so you just want to go ahead and do this, and then after that we can move on to equal stats, but with prep.
Okay, so I actually have to concede here. There's nothing I can really
Okay.
do about the rocket out, Deathstroke's own prep weapons.
Okay. We agreed to 2 rounds of this, so we can just go ahead and move on to equal stats, but with prep. I'll let you start off with equal stats with prep since I started off first, round one. Excuse me.
Okay, so since we're now including prep time, Deathstroke has his tank, which is seems to be comparable to the Batmobile itself in terms of firepower and durability, since it's able to shrug off its own attacks. Just need a clip of this.
Oh no, I already linked the video of the boss fight. I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
So good.
so I could argue that be able to withstand, say, the rocket or the ballistic missiles, at least with
Okay.
enough functionality left, get him close enough to weaken the Arcanite's armor if he's just standing there. Something of the sort.
Can you prove that he can break titanium coated armor? Because the titanium coated armor is what's giving him a durability boost. I'm not sure what type of armor that Deathstroke has, but I've already made the argument earlier that that the Arkham Knight should be able to get around it relatively easily because he got around Batman's armor, and that we see this because he pulled a bullet into the side of Batman, which he even mentions while he's jumping Batman. Here, let me go grab that video. That about about 7 or 8 minutes in? I don't remember.
So you want me to prove that he would be able to, what again?
So you see, so the armor that the Arkham Knight is wearing essentially like grants him protection against normal attacks, like say bullets, uh, knife stabs, stuff of that of the like. So he will be able to tank at least several attacks from Deathstroke. Now, as for blunt force, the only real like vulnerability he has is to his face, but I doubt Deathstroke really knows about that. But I'll go ahead and let you move on to your win con though, because I've been talking for a fair deal. I'm looking for that part in the video. I'm gonna link.
So I would argue that with prep time, since Stroke trained the Arkham Knight into becoming what he is, with the ability to get all the weapons he can, and with the stats being equal, such as speed and durability, I would say that Deathstroke should be able to disable his armor with his weapons or finding weaknesses, and thus be able to beat him.
Okay. Can you prove that he had prior knowledge about the armor at least? Here. Oh yeah, but I found the scene that I was talking about. So, let me go drop this video. This is what I was talking about earlier about the whole aim thing with the Arkham Knight. Not the not the rocket launcher bit, but if you go to 4 minutes, this is where the Arkham Knight like fires about 4 rounds into the ground, and Batman doesn't have enough time to dodge the blitz, and that Arkham Knight just deduces what armor Batman has instantaneously. So
At 4 minutes, you said?
at 4 minutes, he's basically gonna fire a few rounds to the ground, punch Batman to the floor, and then fire a round into the side because he already knows what armor Batman has because he has the same thing. It's visually identical because steel retains a law of identity type of thing in the Arkham games. It's kind of weird, but
Could
like not
argue
much
that.
is really. Oh, sorry. Not
Sorry,
much is really expanded
finish.
on.
I'm sorry, you became very quiet for a second.
Oh, they cut up. So my apologies. So not much is really expanded on the armor in the games, but in the games, all we really know about the armor is that it grants additional protection, and that the armor is made to have a psychological fear factor, such as the fear multi takedown at about 7 minutes in. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but that also should be in the video that I linked. And this is where you see the Arkham Knight just like trade hands with Batman. So I'm still gonna argue that even while Batman jumped the Arkham Knight back, like the Arkham Knight just traded hands just fine, even while being jumped.
Okay. I could essentially argue the same thing, though. If this was the earlier round, I would admit that it would probably be in the Arkham Knight's favor either way, because that Batman probably did train him to become more powerful. But since the stats are equalized and Deathstroke has shown that he can fight on par with Batman no matter what they are doing, whether it be hand to hand with the weapons and even with stealth attacks from either or onto the other, as well as withstand each other's attacks pretty well. I would argue that he'd be able to at least hang in with the Arkham Knight while this is going on, and because of his insane processing ability, he should be able to argue against this. Well, not really argue against this, but be able to defend himself at the very least.
Okay, so what exactly is his skill ability? Can you drop scans for his skill?
Okay, so here he's showing that his combat speed is very comparable to Batman's. I just need to grab each one of them because there are several different varieties.
Okay, so oh yeah, by the way, since we are doing prep, are we including vehicles, or are we only just including them but with prep?
I would say that in character, at least, I would believe that they would grab their vehicles.
Okay, this is gonna take a lot longer than just them by themselves, so
If
the
you,
last bit, unlike them themselves, and move on to the weapons. Sound good?
so if you don't want to do that, though, we could just stop with them.
I don't mind. I actually agreed to like full prep and like having their entire army with them, so I'm good. So moving back on to the skill thing. I'm fine with saying that Batman will at least have like somewhat more skill in Arkham Knight, but I'll go ahead and steelman the fact that he has similar skill to the Arkham Knight. Well, Deathstroke having similar skill to the Arkham Knight. For the sake of charitability, so I'll go ahead and move on to what the Arkham Knight has before we move on to their vehicles and whatnot. So the Arkham Knight has a sniper weapon, but they both can aim dodge each other, since they both can clearly aim dodge. This has been shown because he like aimed at Batman while Batman is flying down and just engaged close combat with him. Uh, Batman has similar aim dodging capabilities to the Arkham Knight, so we can scale at least his ability to aim dodge to the Arkham Knights. And then Deathstroke, I've already steelman said he has something like that. So that is a bit of a no-brainer for the pistols and the sniper. That will just allow him time to dodge. But in case Deathstroke does get into his face situation, the Arkham Knight, even while heavily enraged and not able to really think, still gave himself the ability to just get out of the way while deploying by deploying smoke bombs. He can do this without laying his hands on the smoke bomb, and he can put the bomb in your face to to like play with your mind. So he would be able to like get out of situations with his smoke bombs. Now we don't actually know how many smoke bombs he does have, but since this is prep, it would be definitely safe to say because of the characters that they would have more than enough to get out of personal situation, or at least the Arkham Knight does. Now,
So I'm just going to drop a list of Deathstroke's gear because it should be applicable since he does have prep time to gather everything that he needs.
okay.
Fucking cat, leave me alone. So his ballistic staff should be able to allow him to at least fight on par with the Arkham Knight while he's using his bombs, because he has his concealed rifle and a bomb launcher himself, which should at least allow him to keep the Arkham Knight at bay. Because while his armor should be able to withstand the bombs, since if I recall, Batman was able to withstand them, it should still cause pain and damage. So it would probably be something that the Arkham Knight should avoid, as well as his proximity bombs, which would allow him to, pretty much place down a minefield for Arkham Knight.
I remember the boss fight from Arkham Origin. All right, so I'm fine with steel manning.
So their gear should be comparable. Their skill, we determined, is fairly comparable.
At least comparable, because I gave. I'm fine with saying that in this case, the Arkham Knight would have a severe disadvantage in close range combat, but I am willing to say that the Arkham Knight does have the advantage in long range combat. simply because
I
Deathstroke doesn't
would.
actually have anything for long range other than just simply aim dodging. But the Arkham Knight could just like retain control if it's just them by themselves, because again, he has the scanner which allows him to detect the heat of who he fights, and this does not exempt him or does not exempt Deathstroke from this. So, uh, I
I'll
don't think they'd
definitely
be
agree.
able to have, yeah. And I'm saying that the scanner would allow him to at least keep an eye on Deathstroke, and I don't believe that there would be a conclusive debate if they were to go to the middle game. So, you will move on to the vehicles now.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea because we could just keep arguing semantics. Oh, I could keep it at long range, but no, I could get close range, and their
Yeah.
minor
So,
advantages wouldn't
yeah, we go
exactly
on ad
just be
nauseum if we. Oh, sorry.
right.
Yeah, we going on ad nauseum to keep it going. So I'll go ahead and start. So, going straight to 2 minutes in, since I'll allow the Arkham Knight to have his helicopter. If you go to 2 minutes in this video, you'll clearly see that he has an army of men, along with a tank or two, along with a storage helicopter. So he could just call it in, and excuse me, but Scarecrow would just simply send everything his way. Since this is a prep Arkham Knight, he does most of the practical work, whereas say like him and Scarecrow would do the theoretical planning. That's how they managed to raid the entirety of Arkham City. So I believe that so I believe that Jason Todd's ability to the plan or at least prep would scale above Deathstroke's, because I've not really seen any prep feats for Deathstroke. Whereas say the Arkham Knight just planned a raid on Arkham, and like they successfully raided the entire place, and like Batman could really fight them back. He's fucking Batman. It's a game, so
Right, obviously. Uh, I would agree that the Arkham Knight's ability to prepare for the situation should be superior to Deathstroke's because Deathstroke does appear to be more reactionary, as in you'll do something to him and he'll find your weaknesses, whereas the Arkham Knight seems to be waiting for you to come to him pretty much all the time.
okay.
Uh, where's that damn scan? So
Okay.
I could argue though that the small army of men, didn't take too long for Deathstroke to dispatch, as he has previously defeated over 100 men by himself. I just need to grab that to confirm this.
Okay. So, if you go to 39 seconds in, he has an attack helicopter which he could use just to do damage to Deathstroke. How exactly would Deathstroke handle the attack helicopter?
I'd say that he could use his.
Because it took about 30 or so hits or more from the Batmobile, which we both know the Batmobile has higher offensive capabilities than any tank that Deathstroke would have to actually do damage to the helicopter. And that we know this because in the boss fight against the attack helicopter, it took several attacks from the Batmobile before it crashed. So, the Arkham Knight could just use the attack helicopter and get in some pretty heavy offense, because I don't really see much of a counter from Deathstroke besides like maybe like arming his tank or two with like some miniguns or whatever and like trying to destroy it eventually. But I think that like by then, like the majority or at least all of Deathstroke's men should have already been defeated or killed, considering that this is a knight who's pissed wants revenge. So, do you have any real counters to this?
I would simply try to argue that the tank's durability should be comparable, at least, to Batmobiles, which would allow it to withstand at least the punishment of the helicopter for long enough to bring it down. And as for the 100 enemies thing that I addressed, I know that we both know that he is able to do this, but I just want to be able to prove my claim so that I'm caught.
Oh yeah, you're fine. You're fine. I'll go ahead and steelman it since I actually have heard the feat before in the comics. So I'm gonna go ahead and steelman it here. So don't worry about it.
So That's really the main way I would see him being able to deal with the helicopter. Just a prolonged and slightly less efficient version of the way Batman was able to bring it down.
Okay, so uh, I'm also gonna make another argument. So while all of this is happening, uh, there's gonna be a fear toxin bomb, and that this fear toxin bomb will take maybe an hour to at worst arm and successfully blow up. And that because this was a prep feat by the Arkham Knight, we can easily assume that he'd be able just to escape the entire fear toxin bomb, since he was just fine in Ace Chemicals, which that was actually over half the feats I mentioned just now in the prep debate. So we're gonna agree that this is probably gonna be like an hour-long fight, right? Like they have each other's
Right.
armies. They're gonna be dealing with each other's armies with their own arsenals. They have tanks. They're gonna be doing damage to each other. Arkham Knight's gonna pull out the helicopter. Deathstroke is gonna pull out his army of tanks, and then they're gonna go to war, right? This is
Right.
probably gonna take like 45 minutes and probably an hour, right? We both agree on that.
And I definitely agree on that.
Okay, so while this is happening, I'm willing to make the counter argument that because the Arkham Knight will be in his attack helicopter, I think that when the bomb goes off, his copter will at least still be functional because the attack helicopter is scaling to the Batmobile, or at least its durability is scaling above the Batmobile. So it should give him more than enough time or more than enough of an opportunity to at least escape when the bomb goes off. And that when this bomb goes off, you lose your sanity and everything else attached to it. We know that because it has a bunch of Scarecrow's fear toxin. Yeah, this and then a small batch of fear toxin severely messed with Batman's mind. And that Batman, who was a previous victim of the Scarecrow's fear toxin, should should theoretically be able to mentally counter it. But even at the end of the game, we clearly see that Batman has a lot of trouble dealing with the Joker. So what exactly does Deathstroke have to counter this? Because we both know that he's going to know about the bomb because it's a prep fight. So what exactly does he have to counter it?
So it has been stated before that due to his super soldier enhancement that he's resistant, or well, I would say immune, but that's kind of a no limits fallacy. But he should at least be resistant to the poison. I mean the toxin, as that's part of what was injected into him in the first place.
Okay.
So I wouldn't argue that. So I'm not going to say that he just is immune to it completely, but I would say that it's not instantly a GG in itself because he should at least be able to retain his sanity long enough to at least do more damage to what I would presume would be the already damaged helicopter by the time the bomb explodes, in order to be able to bring it down. And then from there, the same win con technically still applies because, well, they're both battered, they're both damaged by this point, as the fight has been going on for roughly an hour. Of course, you could equally argue that by this point that Deathstroke would also be weakened, so the Arkham Knight could still beat him, but I would say that the gas in itself would not instantly debilitate him.
All right. I'll go ahead and make the presuppositional argument as well that because he's been around Scarecrow long enough, and because he's been prepping the raid on the city, along with arming that fear toxin bomb, I'm also willing to argue that he should have a resistance or an immunity to it, because Occam's razor dictates that we go with the assumption with the least amount of assumptions packed into it. So I'm also willing to agree that he would be in a state, or at least a similar state of debilitation as well. Is that acceptable?
That's very acceptable.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, you cut off. Your audio was very low.
oh, sorry. All right, so they're battered in the weekend. They're about to fight, right? They're both battered. Okay, so
Right.
I'm going to make the argument that the Arkham Knight will win from a durability and stamina standpoint, because I'm going to upscale the titanium coated armor above Deathstroke's steel armor. And this is because because of rules of physics, the kinetic force shouldn't have knocked out Deathstroke if he had armor on par with that with Batman's. and that the Arkham Knight actually does have armor on par of that with Batman. So I'm willing to argue that because this is going to be more of a blunt force fight, the weapons are probably going to be destroyed, this, that, or the other. I'm willing to argue that their hand-to-hand combat capabilities would just allow the Arkham Knight to eventually win, because he has knowledge on joints and weak points in armor. Not to mention his own armor is at least relative or above that of Batman. So, how would you go exactly countering that?
I would argue that while Deathstroke's armor should logically be weaker, scientifically speaking, it does possess the ability to regenerate over time. So I could argue that since this fight's going to be prolonged, well, as we established, it's not like Arkham Knight's just going to punch him once and then his head's going to fly off. His armor should be able to at least withstand enough punishment to begin to repair itself. So if we're going from a stat standpoint, Deathstroke should be able to logically hang in the fight long enough to be able to defeat the Arkham Knight.
Okay, so do you mind dropping scans of that, or at least something to that extent?
Just I need a fan of the regeneration.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give you time to get that stuff. So I'll go ahead and move on to my rebuttal. So the Arkham Knight was trained by Batman, and even an early Batman was at least still on par with Deathstroke, because chronologically this Arkham Knight should have been adopted by Batman sometime after the encounter with Deathstroke back in Arkham Origin. So I would argue that because that Batman is more experienced than, say, the Deathstroke at that point, due to the fact that he's been training with the Batman and later trained with, say, people like maybe the Joker or maybe Scarecrow or other people of that regard, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's more likely for the Arkham Knight to win because of his knowledge on pressure points and his ability to crack armor. Not to mention, he could just play mind games with Deathstroke because he was playing mind games with Batman throughout the entirety of the game. How exactly would you go on to counter this? Because I don't think Deathstroke can stop his neck from being snapped.
If the Arkham is able to wear him down to that point, I would say that he should be able to win. The main thing is that I would argue that Deathstroke has better stamina and better durability, and his suit's regeneration and his own minor regeneration should at least be able to keep him from dying within the span of a normal, like in the span that the Arkham Knight would be able to defeat Batman.
Okay.
Despite the fact that Batman at this point and the Arkham Knight would be physically superior and likely more durable.
Remember, the Arkham Knight will at least have knowledge to say snap his neck, because I doubt Deathstroke can just instantly wake up from his neck being snapped. I'll go ahead and give you time to drop the regeneration stuff, but can you also prove that that Deathstroke can instantly recover from his brain being destroyed, his neck being snapped, or just him being put in cardiac arrest in general?
The Arkham series alone, no, I cannot, because I don't remember him being damaged. Because Batman mostly just knocks him out, and that's usually what ends the fight.
Okay. Because I'm aware that he has a regen factor, and that his mind is generally resistant to, say, most forms of psychological torture. But the Arkham Knight is well versed in torture, as he is a victim of torture himself. The Joker himself tortured him for over a year and a half, back when he was still a boy. So he would be able to at least withstand most forms of punishment and just recover just fine, based off his experiences when he was still a child, and that with knowledge in mind from both his own childhood and the training he's received as he's grown older, he could just snap his neck, he could break his arms, he could do whatever it really takes to kill Deathstroke, because I noticed that his shoulder pressure point, or at least his clavicle pressure point, is open on the armor. The Arkham Knight actually does notice that, and he will notice that very, very quickly in their fight. So I believe he can say take advantage of that pressure point and knock out Deathstroke and say snap his neck, or whichever he's most likely to do at least.
I would argue his biological regeneration wouldn't really help too much,
Okay, so
given his eye is still covered from the shell, so it should still be damaged. So I would definitely not try to argue that he would, pull a Deadpool and just troll while he regenerates. So I think I still have to concede because the Arkham Knight, while Deathstroke did train him to be better than Batman, that would also imply that he's better than him because the Batman consistently fights on par with and defeats Deathstroke. So his skill and ability to debilitate him, I'll admit, should be superior than Deathstroke's ability to do the same back to him.
Okay. Because I noticed in this regeneration that doesn't seem to be practical, like, combat regeneration. It would more or less just seem to be like an in-between phase regeneration, if that makes sense. So I don't really believe that would be practical enough regeneration to allow him to fight further. Now, I'm fine with saying that regen factor would allow him to say fight for longer periods and would just add to his, like, stamina. But I believe what would happen in the fight is that, like, the Arkham Knight would just snap his neck early in once he notices that Deathstroke has enough stamina to last for a long time. So, do you agree just to concede to on grounds of, like, say snapping of the neck or whatever?
Yeah, because given Deathstroke's lack of impressive regeneration and very fast regeneration feats, I would definitely say that he wouldn't just recover within an instant, and it would definitely be at least a temporary down. So standard battle assumptions, he would lose the fight, since if the Arkham Knight can't truly kill him, he would be down, and therefore the Arkham Knight would win. So I'll concede.
Okay, so GG, good debate. I definitely enjoyed that debate. Hopefully you did too. So
it was fun.
yeah. This is actually my first time debating something like this. So, GG. That was fun. This is gonna be kind of difficult to fucking upload. I'm not gonna lie, but it's gonna be enjoyable. So.
Definitely G. The Arkham Knight's too much.
Yeah. So. Why is the bot fucking up?
That's because you said I record.